Okay, we're set.
He hasn't given us the all go,
Oh,
but it looks
I
like
see
we're
that.
close.
Okay.
We're good, almost
Okay.
there.
Okay, off we go. The February 8th, 2021 Forest Grove School District Board of Directors meeting is called to order at 5:32 p.m. A roll call of board members present tonight. I'm Mark Everett, present. Kate Granduski.
Present.
Brad Bafaro.
I'm here.
Narce Rodriguez.
I'm here.
And Valerie Ingram is not here with us this evening. Miley Vernon.
Here.
Okay, great. Thank you. The school board will hear public comment for unscheduled public appearance received through the designated email address, which is publiccomment@fgsdk.k12.or.us and is on the district website. Comments will be read by district staff at the appropriate time on the agenda and will be limited to 3 minutes. Would you please join me in the flag salute? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. If we could do introductions of audience and staff that are with us this evening at this time.
John O'Neill, Assistant Superintendent.
David Warner, Communications.
Kim Scherer, Director of Student Services.
Enrique Piñón, Technology Department.
Kevin Noreen, Director of Human Resources.
Cassie Kenny, District Coordinator of Behavioral Health and Wellness.
Kendra Key Rose, K-8 Mental Health Care Coordinator.
Tina Meinica, Student Success Coach.
Hannah Thompson, 9 through 12 Care Coordinator.
Brenda Peters, School Counselor at Neil Armstrong Middle School.
Okay, I think that's it. Thank you, everybody. Approval of tonight's agenda is next. Is there a motion to approve the agenda for this evening?
I move that we approve tonight's agenda as written.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay. Hearing none, we'll call for a vote. I'm a yes. Kate Granduski?
Yes.
Brad Bafaro?
Yes.
Narce Rodriguez?
Yes.
Thank you. That motion passes. We'll jump down to the student representative report. Miley, if you have a report for this evening.
Yeah, okay, so this is a little longer than usual. So since starting ASB, I don't know how to say it. Well, our groups have been working, and so I'm just going to go over a little bit of like what each group is working on right now. So athletics and esports, they're just getting information out to classes about esports and getting more publicizing more and stuff. And then class and competition, they're developing an idea of a class trivia, and it will be based on teachers, I'm pretty sure. Clubs is going to get emails out to clubs about just everything, and then they're contacting them also to get ready for the student council meeting, which will be on February the 18th, and then go on from there to the end of school. Our legal team, which is new this year, is going to they're getting the student council, and they'll be setting up student council and doing But anyway, they're getting the meeting set up and the agenda done for the meeting. And then they're also maybe going to start editing some of our bylaws and just changing those. Our outreach team is working on Meaningful Mondays, so we do those every Monday. Productions right now is working on the how-to videos, so in the future we can just always rely on those videos to use for someone. Publicity and recognition, they're working on the Senior Hall of Fame and also e-cards for birthdays. Social media, they're making an ASB website with all ASB links so it's easy to access. And then they're also working on an ASB calendar. And this week we have a Valentine's Spirit Week, and today was Red and Pink Day, tomorrow's Hat Day. Wednesday is Compliment Day, where you email a teacher a compliment, and then Thursday is going to be Care Day, where you take a picture with someone or something that you care about, and finally on Friday is Heart Day, wear something with hearts on it. And that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. That's a lot. You guys are, it sounds like everybody's very busy. Okay. Let's see, correspondence and celebrations, calendar notes, recognition, and the superintendent report. I kind of roll that all into one, Mr.
Yep.
Parker. So,
Perfect. Again, I'll spend a little time at the end of the meeting kind of getting everybody up to date around what's going on with vaccines, return to in school, and all the rest of that. So I'll just kind of skip into the other pieces I want to talk about tonight. The first thing is meal service is being expanded for Forest Grove families. Nutrition Services recently completed a survey of families that are receiving meals. Most families are struggling to come in and pick up the meals every day. So Forest Grove School District is starting a 7-day meal kit program for families that are unable to attend the daily meal pickup. This will start on February 15th and will look similar to the meal boxes that were provided to families over the winter break. Families will have to fill out an online survey in advance each week to be able to pick up their meal box at any of the 4 walk-up sites. So we're excited about this. I think it'll make it easier for families to come in and make use of kind of the free and reduced lunches. Second thing I wanted to talk just a little bit about is athletics. So Forest Grove High School just finished 5 weeks of the indoor winter sports programs. They've been having workouts outside and virtually. But February 2nd, 22nd is the start of the second season of sports, and it's soccer, volleyball, cross country. Football started today with practices based on recommendations from the Medical Aspects Committee for OSAA and the National Football for high schools. Water polo has voted as a non-OSAA sport to move their season to season 3 because currently the swimming pools aren't open. But just this morning, OSAA was voted to officially approve soccer and cross-country seasons to officially start on February 22nd, with the games and matches beginning on March 1st. Still talking about spectators and all those types of things, but it's just exciting, I think, to get our kids moving and getting some athletics, some activities starting to move in our schools. So I'm excited about this. Currently, moderate contact sports like volleyball are only allowed in some counties based on the state metrics. Counties that are considered high risk and below can compete in volleyball. Currently in Washington County, we're in the extreme category, but what I'm hearing is tomorrow, as early as tomorrow, the governor may come out and change Washington County's status. And so if that happens, it will kind of open up some doors for us to begin to run some volleyball. If we're unable to compete in volleyball because of county metrics, the OSAA board this morning is allowing each school to ask for a waiver to move their season to a little bit further down the road in hopes that we might still be able to participate. Doug is anticipating that we'll do this as a conference. So if some of our conference decides to delay the season, then everybody will probably go together. Volleyball is just starting under there were some new rules that were laid out for folks in extreme where you could have 6 athletes at a time. So volleyball's already starting to do a little bit of their workouts inside. I think it's starting Wednesday. Football, basketball, and wrestling are currently designated as high contact sports and are prohibited by OHA and the governor's office. The OHA executive board this morning anticipates some movement from OHA and the governor's office this week. If full contact football isn't allowed, the board designated some different options like 7-on-7, flag football, virtual lineman challenge. I'm not sure what that is, but that's one of the things they're looking at. And then a virtual combine. So we'll kind of wait and see how things emerge here. My best get is like 7-on-7 is probably a pretty good, maybe a good place for that to be. Starting the first week of March, we'll start season 3 of workouts a couple of days a week. Baseball, softball, tennis, track, golf, and lacrosse will all should be eligible to participate and play. To prepare for the start of their season in April, we anticipate these seasons will be a go based on the metrics and the requirements. Forest Grove High School Athletics Department and its coaches are working to allow opportunities for all kids to get out and get moving. So we're excited about this. This is, I mean, it's baby steps here, but I really just am happy to see getting kids moving again. And that's kind of the information we have on that. One other interesting thing I wanted to talk about today was what we've been seeing over the past 2 weeks is just about 250 daily Zoom participants from Mexico. In our district, we have a situation where many of our students go to Mexico during the Christmas season and come back as we get closer to the spring. And you know, this is just one of those things. While there's lots of challenges in our district right now, this is one of those things where the technology is actually very helpful for us because we still have, and we're not exactly sure on the number because in a Zoom conference, you could connect via your computer and also your phone. So we're not sure if some of those connections are the same person, but still it's a big number. And I just wanted to kind of share that. I think it's a really, maybe some of the things we want to keep moving forward is this gives our kids, even when they're out of our area, still the ability to participate in school. So I just thought that was fun. Enrique mentioned it this morning. And then I'll save the rest for talking about kind of what I'm hearing with the return to in-person schooling.
Thanks very much, Dave. Any questions? Okay. Next on the agenda is the unscheduled public appearance. The board appreciates community members sharing information during public comments. Public comments should be submitted through the designated email address and will be read by district staff. Public comments will be limited to 3 minutes, as is the protocol during in-person board meetings. Public criticism or complaints about school district personnel is not allowed at this time. Are there any comments that have been received?
No comment.
Yeah, no, we have not received any.
Okay, thanks. I just want to take a moment and just, I just want to say that the board appreciates the comments that we get, whether it's at a public meeting or whether it's via email outside of public meetings. The comments and the questions and the concerns for schooling and anything school related are appreciated. They're always appreciated. And so I'm glad that the community is involved as they are. And I think it's great. So just a comment about those that we get here and also outside of the school board meeting. So thanks very much.
And Mark, I would just so that everybody knows what we're doing, as we're getting more and more emails specifically related to the return to in-person, if I get them, I'm trying to share them with the board and with the cabinet at the same time. So we're all hearing the different viewpoints that are coming in. So if a cabinet person gets a separate email that's just delivered to them, what we're trying to do is just forward that out and make sure that everybody sees it so we're all in the know.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. All right, moving on. The consent agenda is the next item. The consent agenda is made up of routine, non-controversial items to be voted on under one motion. Are there any items within the consent items a board member or the superintendent wishes to discuss separately. And I just have one question before we move on, and it's if Mr. Noreen, if you're here, maybe you can answer this one. I just noticed that I think maybe we had some resignations and are we replacing folks for? There were a couple of teaching resignations, I believe.
Yes, that's correct. We've had a couple of mid-year resignations, and so you'll see on the personnel report that those new hires are represented as temporary hires for the remainder of the year.
Okay, and we were able to fill the ones that left with new ones. Are those all filled, or?
Yeah, the ones that are on the report are the ones that we were able to fill. So we were able to successfully fill those resignations.
Okay, I thought I saw one that maybe a math teacher had resigned, but we hadn't hired a new math teacher. Maybe, I don't know. I don't have it right in front of me, but.
There is a math teacher on the new hire, Chair.
Oh,
so
okay,
yeah.
Maybe I missed that. Okay, thank you. That's a question I had. So, no other questions? Okay, we'll do a motion. If I could have a motion to approve.
I move that we approve the agenda as presented.
A second.
Moved and seconded. No discussion, I don't believe. Okay, we'll do a roll call vote. So Narcisse,
Yes.
Brad,
Yes.
Kate,
Yes.
and I'm a yes as well. So that passes. Thanks very much. Okay, we have two presentations this evening. The first presentation is a behavioral and mental health program presentation, and then the second is returning to school. So for the first presentation, it will be Cassie Kinney and her team. So the floor is yours.
Great, thank you. I am going to share my screen. And okay, there we go. See that? All right. Let's see if I can change my view here. All right, first off, just thank you so much for having us here this evening and allowing us to present some of the work that we've been focused on during this first semester in behavioral health and wellness. There we go. So today you'll be hearing from, a couple of us. You'll be hearing from Kendra, who's our mental health care coordinator for K-8. You'll be hearing from Christina, our student success coach at K4, really K-8 right now. You'll be hearing from Marinda, our school counselor at NAMS, and you'll be hearing from myself, district coordinator of behavioral health and wellness. So before we get started, we just wanted to share an overview of the different components of behavioral health that we'll be touching on this evening. We have a lot of information to share, and we tried very hard to pare it down to something reasonable. We don't plan to stop for questions after every single section here, but we welcome questions. So if you have a question, if you're curious about something, please unmute, please put it in the chat whenever it comes up. We also, at the end of this presentation, will have time for additional questions and feedback. And before we get started with the components of behavioral health that we've been focused on this first semester, we really wanted to center everybody in the Oregon Department of Education integrated model of mental health and well-being. So this graphic just came out in December, and we think it encompasses the different lenses that we look through whenever we're providing any behavioral health and wellness services in district. The first question we ask ourselves is it cell-driven? Is it social and emotional learning driven? So is it skills-based? The next question is it equity centered? As with everything else we do in district, it needs to be provided through an equity lens to ensure that we're meeting the needs of all our students. We ask, is it strengths-based? And is it trauma informed? So are we taking into account the context of our students and creating safe environments for them in the school-based setting? And to my team tonight, when you need me to go to the next slide, please just say next, and I will do my best to just go one slide ahead. We will not be saying caca. like Christina said, to change slides last week in a teacher presentation. Just next, it works for tonight. So first up, we have Kendra with mental health care coordination. Oops.
Yeah, so you can go to the first semester data. Yeah, the next one. Thank you, Cassie. So hi, everyone. Good evening. Just a reminder, our care coordination position is newer to our school district. This is the second school year that we have had this position, which is really exciting for our district. This is my second year in the K through 8 role. And we also now have my colleague Hannah, who is in the 9 through 12 care coordination role. So we just wanted to share a little bit of our first semester data that we collected. So as of January 22nd, we had 130 referrals total for K through 12. 50.8% of our referrals identified as male, 48.5% identified as female, and 0.8% identified as non-binary. As for student support, 67.7% of our referrals were from general education, 26.9% were from special education, and 5.4% of our referrals had 504 plans. As for demographics, 54.2% of our referrals identified as Latinx, 35.1% identified as white, and 10.7% identified as other. And for ourselves, we did collect the other specified demographic, but we chose just to combine it for the purposes of this presentation in order to protect the confidentiality of our smaller populations. And for our students identified home language, 50% identified their home language as English, 46.9% identified their home language as Spanish, and 3.1% identified their home language as English and Spanish. And for referrals by building, 2.3% of our referrals were from Cornelius, 2.3% from Joseph Gale, 3.1% from Harvey Clark, 3.8% from Echo Shaw, 7.7% from Fern Hill, 10.8% from Tom McCall, 9.2% from Neil Armstrong, 59.2% from the high school, and 1.5% from Create. And you can go to next, Cassie, thank you. And we wanted to share our top 4 reasons why students were referred to us. So we have school counselors identify why students are being referred to us. So the top 4 reasons were that the student appears depressed or withdrawn, that the student expressed family system stressors, that the student appeared overly anxious, and that the student was struggling with pandemic and comprehensive distance learning. And we also collected data on our referral outcomes to date. So as of 1/22, 55.4% of our referrals were connected with a mental health provider. We weren't able to find out if about 19.2% of our referrals were connected or not, just due to a lack of response from the family. And for 13.8% of our referrals, we met with them and gave them a referral, but they did not attend intake. And even if they have not attended an intake yet, we still collaborate and follow through with that family just to continue encouraging them to access mental health services. And then 6.9% of our referrals ended up declining mental health services after we reached out to them. And 4.6% of our referrals were receiving support from our Forest Grove School District mental health specialists. And we also just wanted to note that the pandemic has really impacted the availability of in-person mental health services and wait lists. So in response, Hannah, our 9 through 12 care coordinator, has been providing short-term therapy to high school students, both virtually and then in limited in-person formats.
And one thing that I want to note about the referral outcomes is that those are ever evolving. So the numbers you see there are current as of only January 22nd. Our care coordinators will continue to work with those families. So lack of response does not mean that case is closed. It just means that as of that date, that family had not responded yet. So that data will change as the weeks go on.
Yes, exactly. Thank you, Cassie. So for our next steps for mental health care coordination, we plan to continue working with community agencies and providers to provide feedback on availability and services to increase access to mental health support for our students and families. And we want to continue collaborating with outside resources to increase family awareness, understanding, and access to mental health support. So for the spring, we are going to be collaborating with an agency called ASHA International and Lines for Life. Both of these agencies support with suicide prevention. We also, I will be continuing meeting with our Forest Grove School District migrant liaison meetings to improve access to culturally responsive care and just to continue collaborating with them. We also plan to launch a grief group at the high school that will be co-facilitated by our high school care coordinator, Hannah, and by our youth contact school-based provider. You can go next, Cassie, thank you.
All right, thank you, Kendra. Christina, updates on student success coaching.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having us here. I'm really excited to provide some updates. And when I was thinking through last year at about this time, we came and we presented on the work that we were doing. And the student success coach role was new last year also. So we are in our second school year. And one of the main focuses that we talked about was just really continuing to develop a true system in which we were able to provide multiple levels of support. And that is something that I'm really proud that we have done, along with more integration and collaboration. So our focus so far this year has really been on the comprehensive distance learning and how do we integrate and help with social and emotional learning, especially over the Zoom platform. And then, as Cassie mentioned before, you'll note that we no longer say pre-K 4 on the front of my title because as much as possible, I am trying to support our 5-8 grades also. And I will not caw, even though Cassie, you now put it in my head. So if you can go ahead and go to the next slide. So I'm just going to warn you from the beginning, I fit in really well with this team because I love data and data-driven decisions and just being able to measure impact, but know that we are meeting the needs of everyone that we are servicing. So along with our system of support in the student success coach role, one of the key components is providing support on a daily level, on a weekly level, and then on a monthly level so that everyone has the opportunity to engage in that support depending on their needs and that it's in a pattern and they can plan on it. So just really quick, weekly, we provide a newsletter. At this particular point, 448 staff members are subscribed to it. And that just means that every Sunday they know it's coming. It's full of resources and just information on other supports that are available. Every Friday, we have a community circle where staff members can join to process the week, to ask questions, we call it grabbing greatness. They join to talk with each other and share ideas. And then each Wednesday, I am able to work and collaborate with other TOSAs or with our building principals to provide CIT support or PD for staff. And then on a monthly basis, we have new teacher mentoring. In fact, today I had a meeting with our new teachers. And then we also have booster sessions this year that are all focused on PACS, which is our core social emotional learning program. Next. That was hard. So I just also wanted to make sure that I mentioned that we really focus on the individual, then the building and the district level support. And I'm not going to read through all of these, but I do want to make sure that I point out that any of the supports that I'm talking about are not just Christina Meinica supports. It has been a real focus to integrate and collaborate. So for example, I meet almost weekly with our ELD facilitators and coaches, the other TOSAs, the counselors and I did I'm now going to call it the CACA presentation last week. So this support, when it's talking about individual, building, and district level, it is truly integrated. And it is all data driven based on needs of the buildings and individual teachers and then groups. And you can see by these two graphs just where right now the support is being where we're providing support. I do want to mention that this year is much different than last year. Last year, I would say the majority of my individual coaching was with new teachers, and this year that is proportional across all experience levels. So we have a lot of new teachers that have requested support, but we have a lot of experienced teachers, and to be honest, I think everyone's a new teacher this year. Next. Thanks, Cassie. That being said, so on the individual level, on the actual coaching cycle, we are using the impact cycle, which is Jim Knight's model, and it is all data-driven, as mentioned before. We have 24 educators currently in a full coaching cycle, which means that they meet with me on a regular basis. They have a baseline for their social emotional learning data goal, and we progress monitor it. They choose strategies based on the goal that they have and the outcomes that they're seeing for their students. All of our goals are student needs driven. As of January, the end of January, we had 63 student focused goals met. And I can't tell you how that compares to last year because we didn't keep this data, and I didn't keep like true goals and how many goals is a teacher completing. So this is really exciting to say, hey, we can show that throughout the coaching cycles, these are the things that teachers are really working on and their accomplishments. And I would say that teachers, just like any other learner, this is really motivating. When you know that the work that you're doing is having an impact, it significantly increases your motivation to continue. And it's all about skill development. And we have seen that teachers now pretty much are doing coaching cycles on their own. Some of them that have been through this 3, 4, and 5 times, because they'll call me this morning. I got a call and it was like, okay, I have baseline data. So here's what I think I need to do. And that just gives me goosebumps, because when teachers really have that power of how we are measuring social and emotional skills, and then can make those decisions based on instructional strategies, that is just really powerful. I do want to mention the instructional strategies. That's been a real key collaboration between our department and C&I. We make sure that we have continual conversations about what are the engagement strategies, what are the instructional strategies that we are all promoting, so that teachers are getting the same messages and more support. So that's really important for me to note. I do also just want to say 58% of the goals that are met impacted participation and engagement. And I'm certain that when you talk to anyone, they will say like participation and engagement on Zoom has been a key just challenge. And so that is a number that I am proud to present to you on behalf of the teachers and their hard work. We also have 41 educators that I've worked with that have not been in or supported outside of a coaching cycle. And we just wanted to make sure that we mentioned that, because not every teacher, not every educator is in a full cycle. And to be very honest, there is no way 28 is a lot right now. I'm really struggling to keep up with that. So we are providing support for educators in different ways that doesn't include a full coaching cycle. And then again, I'm not going to read this to you, but I just wanted to show you, this is a basic outline of how we do data-driven, especially when it comes to a CIT or a professional development for a building. So for example, this Wednesday, I'm working with Joseph Gale. We sent out a survey. The teachers and the staff, they respond to the survey so we can assess their needs. And then based on what they choose as the strategies and the social emotional learning components, I then coordinate with, if it's the counselors or maybe the ELD facilitator, we coordinate together and with the administration to develop our PD time to meet their needs. And then we always do a follow-up survey at the end so that we can really assess, like, how did we meet your needs? What was your level of knowledge that you gained? And we make adjustments based on that feedback. I know I'm talking really fast, but I promised Cassie I wouldn't take too much time. So last but not least, what are our next steps? And one of the big next steps is just to continue to assess our implementation levels. Specifically, this is around our PACS GBG core social emotional learning program. I'm really proud to say that even in the time of the pandemic, every educator pre-K4 is trained. Our new teachers have been trained. We even have our teachers who filled in for maybe retirements or that are on a temporary basis. They have been trained in PACS and they are being supported and working on implementation. We continue to work with them to identify the barriers and any needs that they have. And I won't say that this has been easy, but we aren't using CDL as an excuse to put that on a back burner. It is in the forefront, that training in our core programs to ensure we're meeting Tier 1 needs. That is a continued next step. We also are really working on a system for feedback for coaching. So I mentioned we have 28 teachers in the coaching, in a coaching cycle right now. It's vital that we continue to develop a way that those teachers that go through a cycle can really give us feedback on what were the components that worked well, what are the components that we can adjust, and that we are able to measure the impact that coaching is having on our teachers and their skill and just overall their feeling of support. Especially for me, I'm just going to say it's a personal passion of mine to ensure that our new teachers feel very supported to help in a multitude of ways, but especially in retention. And over the Zoom world, that has been an even bigger focus this year because it's so isolating. And then transition support. I know that Mr. Parker is going to talk more later about that transition to in-person, but this is the top of the list right now, really supporting and working with our social emotional leaders throughout the district to develop resources and systems and just ensure that we have the supports in place as students come back in limited in person and then when we come back into a full hybrid model. And then the last piece is the expanding to 5-8. I would say that right now I am doing some coaching, true coaching support at Tom McCall. I am not even going to mention doing that at NAMS for multiple reasons, but number one, because I don't have the capacity right now to do that at the level that teachers and educators deserve. So that is something that we are really looking at. How can we expand that support?
And we had planned on posting for a second student success coach position this past fall, and we did in fact post for it. Because of the timing with student investment account funding, teachers had already started getting to know their students. And so I had multiple teachers reach out to me and say, I really am so interested in this position and supporting teachers with social and emotional learning. However, I can't leave my students right now once I've started forming relationships with these students and family members. And I thought, oh my goodness, that's exactly the kind of relationship building skills we want in an additional student success coach. So we made the decision as a department to not hire in the fall, to do the best we could with the supports we have this year. But it's clear that the demand for student success coaching, especially as we expand, is really outpacing our ability to meet those needs at this point. Okay, social and emotional learning. So you heard Christina talk quite a bit about what she's been focused on at pre-K through 4 this fall. The biggest question is, what does social and emotional learning look like during comprehensive distance learning? She's also engaged in a high level of collaboration with our PACS partners, with our elementary school counselors, with other teachers to meet that need. Another feature that we wanted to mention from this fall was that we've been piloting a social and emotional learning survey at Joseph Gale 3rd grade. And the CEL survey is a universal screener focused on social and emotional learning needs. And it looks at needs through a skills-based perspective rather than solely relying on discipline data to determine students who need additional support in the area of social and emotional and behavioral. At the 5 through 8 level, we have started embarking on a process to align social and emotional learning at the middle school and at our upper elementary school, So far, we've had 4 monthly meetings. We have on average 18 participants who are part of those meetings. And our first order of business has been a needs assessment. So we developed a social and emotional learning needs assessment, and we administered it to all staff at the middle school and the upper elementary school in December. And based on that feedback, we've taken the next steps of talking about developing a vision for social and emotional learning at the middle grade level. Here are some of our survey results from that needs assessment. And I think this is so cool. Almost 100% of our staff, almost all of our staff at grades 5 through 8, they recognize that social and emotional competencies directly correlate to student academic success. They believe it should be a skill, a priority skill for students, and that it should be integrated into all classroom instruction. In terms of needs, what they really need is, how do we do this? Staff are requesting knowledge for how do we integrate social and emotional learning. We know it's important, but what does that look like school-wide? How do we develop consistency, especially around vocabulary? And overall, staff ranked building a supportive classroom environment as the greatest need to focus on first as we embark on this journey of alignment work. So next steps at the pre-K through 4 level, we'll continue to support the transition to LIPI or hybrid. Continue collaborating with other departments, including our equity work and our curriculum and instruction department. We don't want social and emotional learning to feel like one more thing for teachers. We want to be truly integrated in everything we're offering. We also want to use our current social and emotional learning survey pilot group at 3rd grade Joseph Gale to develop systems for how do we expand this opportunity to other grades and schools throughout the district. At the grades 5 through 8 level, we're working on developing a common vision of social and emotional learning with an equity lens. So our next step is to take that back to the building level and engage staff in conversations around developing that vision. All right, school counseling, Miranda.
Yes, thank you. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Miranda Peters. This is my 13th year with the district. I spent 8 years at the elementary level, and this is my 5th year at the middle school level. And I'm also on the advisory for school counseling at the district level. So as far as first semester areas of focus, obviously we're all working on adapting to comprehensive the counselors are working on adapting comprehensive school counseling to CDL and have been doing amazing work in that. We have all been working on providing tier 1 supports, especially in the areas of social and emotional wellness or well-being. That often looks like pushing into classrooms, providing lessons so that 100% of students get the same information and skill building. We worked really hard on identifying, supporting, and referring students with mental health concerns, such as suicidal ideation and depression. And we have been working on tracking and responding to student academic and attendance data, which I've been doing all day today. Go ahead. So what you're going to be looking at as far as our data is concerned is based off of what the American School Counseling Association and the Oregon Department of Education recommends that we be working on. We have our own Forest Grove School District comprehensive framework for school counseling that we've developed. So the categories in which we're looking at in the following slides are where we are spending our time and should be spending our time. And the way that we do this is doing a time task analysis. So for a week, every counselor is documenting exactly how they've spent their time and logging that data so that we can see what's happening at the district wide of how counselors are working in their buildings. So instead of us going to like nitty gritty through every single school, I kind of try to find overall trends for you. So you will see that every level is below the recommendation of direct student services. And so direct student services would be like providing one-on-one counseling, group counseling, doing school-wide tier 1 like lessons, that type of thing. The elementary is closest to providing recommended core curriculum. So our elementary schools have done a really good job of providing lessons and push and support into the classroom so that every student gets the same social and emotional lessons and safety lessons and everything that they're working on. And you'll see that we've done a really good job K4 for many years actually with that. We are above the recommendation for referring, consulting, and collaborating. So I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing, but we definitely have elementary schools that are really happy to collaborate and find referrals and work with people like our care coordinators. During CDL, we've noticed that counselors are doing more work in program foundation. So we're really trying to build up our school counseling programs to meet the needs of distance learning. And we have also, except for Tom McCall, have found that counselors are doing more school counseling jobs. So during a normal school year, we like to evaluate how much of our time is actually school counseling. And right now we're doing more what's within the standard of what school counseling is. So an example for me is like, yes, I do a lot of lunch duty. I don't have lunch duty anymore. So now I can spend that hour and a half a day doing direct services with students or providing other type of management support. Go ahead.
So Marinda, do you want me, because these slides are all just the data from different schools, do you want me to just flip through them?
I'll just highlight a couple of things. So what you'll see as the categories, these are what the American School Counseling Association wants us to be focused on. So are we providing direct student services? Are we pushing a core curriculum for all students? Are we working on individual student planning? Often that's usually going to be higher at the high school where they're working towards planning for college and career. Responsive services would be things like a student has expressed suicidal ideation, so now we need to do a suicide risk assessment. Referrals and collaboration, obviously working with our partners. Program management is setting up the systems that allow us to have a comprehensive school counseling program. And then we recognize that we have fair share duties and non-counseling duties that fill up our time. With this elementary graph, this is combined K4. So instead of us looking at every individual school, we combined the data. Every school is very different. So this might not represent any one school completely, but it gives us an overall view of what K4 is looking like in time spent. Go ahead, Cassie. This is
Hey,
Tom.
Marinda.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Can you go back one? So the recommended doesn't add up to 100. I just could.
Right.
Can you help me just so I
Understand
can
that.
figure out the data?
Yeah, so direct student services could include things like core curriculum, individual student planning, responsive services, whereas non-direct would be like those referrals and the program management, that type of thing.
I gotcha. Thank you.
Yep. And you'll see that we have 2 years represented. So you can see where we're spending our time this year in that teal color compared to last year at the same time period that we took the data. And then the recommended in the pinkish color from the American School Counseling Association. So here's Tom McCall's data. You'll see it's slightly different. But you can glean the information that you would like to glean. They are definitely spending more time in non-counseling than any other building. Then this is Neil Armstrong's data, and other trends to recognize. So you'll see for us, we are putting a lot of work in program management. So really building up our comprehensive program from a distance. And Forest Grove High School, they are working toward RAMP, which is a recognized comprehensive school counseling program through the American School Counseling Association. So they're getting much closer to those recommendations through lots and lots of work on their end on trying to get these systems in place. So you'll see some of their numbers are actually looking pretty good. So then we're looking at the school counselor caseload. So these are averages. If we combined the elementary, you'll see that it's about 360 students per school counselor, but each building is very different. Upper elementary has 349 students per counselor. The middle school is at the highest. We have 429 students per counselor, and the high school is 379. The American School Counseling Association recommends one counselor per every 250 students. So we definitely have schools that are close or at that mark and schools that are pretty far off of that mark. A couple things to know that this is just an average. So like at the middle school where I'm at, it's by grade level that we're assigned. So my caseload might look a little different than the other counselors just based on enrollment. At the high school, each counselor is going to have their caseload maybe slightly different as well by alpha. But so this averages out the numbers of students. Next. So next steps. So we are we have our tier 1 kind of social emotional supports, especially at the elementary and actually at the middle and the high school, kind of getting pretty clear and clean. We really need to start working on finding what we're doing for our tier 2 social emotional groups. What are we doing now? What are the needs, and how can we align and use evidence-based practices in doing that? So that's one of our next big steps in school counseling. If we can bring our student to counselor ratio down a bit, whether it's 1 and 250 or just closer, we're going to see a couple of things. We'll see that we're going to get more direct student services and core curriculum out through the 6th through 12th grade level. It's just a sheer numbers game that there's just not enough people to do that tier 1 level. We have a lot of thoughts about what's going to happen when students return to school, either the end of this school year or next year, and how we're going to meet their mental health needs, both related to grief and loss. I will say on any given day when I meet with students, about 50% are affected by COVID in some way, whether that is they haven't had it in their household, they have a grandparent who's recently passed. It's rare that I have a conversation with a student that hasn't had some kind of grief or loss related to the pandemic. And so how do we support those students when they come back into the building? And then we also know that we'll have some students who've really thrived in CDL, and we're pretty excited to not have to come into the school buildings. Those are the ones that usually struggle with getting themselves to school during a normal school year, and we expect that to come back for them. And so we are needing to really prepare for those kids who have some separation anxiety, true pandemic anxiety, a lot of things that be going on for them. We will be piloting our new school counselor mentoring program for the next academic year. We have put a proposal together, and the really great news about that is we're going to be one of the few districts that is offering a really comprehensive mentoring program for new school counselors. So as we bring in new school counselors into our district, we have kind of an incentive for them to get the type of training and support that they need. And we're also going to be, probably retaining some pretty great counselors because they get what they need during those first couple of years. And so we'll be working much on implementing all of our tier 2 interventions and supports after the pandemic kind of dies down. So that's where we're at.
Awesome. Thank you, Miranda. I just want to recognize Miranda and our school counseling advisory, along with the rest of our school counselors. They have been working so hard this year. And every time I've pulled together a group or I've asked for volunteers to come together and work on a new initiative, even during this time, we always have volunteers. They're incredibly driven professionals. So I really, really appreciate that team. Family resources, Christina.
So I get to present this information, but before I present it, I just want to say everyone here from the behavioral health and wellness team plays a really big role in the support that we provide for families. And it's not just our team. We, again, have a tremendous amount of collaboration going on across the district. At the beginning of the school year, it became very clear, very fast, that our families needed support on how to not just do school at home, but how to really support the social, emotional, behavioral, and mental health needs of students at home, and that we needed to help support them by developing skills. So we really focused on providing opportunities for families to have sessions where they were developing their skills. Cassie, can you go ahead and thank you. We, at the beginning of the year, we had 2 weeks where we provided almost every evening, I would say it was 4 nights a week, where families could come and provide support just honestly on either technology or how do you set up the classroom in the home? What are you doing? And how can you help support your child's need? Then we did an assessment based on the families who were able to interact with us, and we sent out through teachers. And we really realized and learned that our families needed more sustained support. So in October, we started an 8-week session using the distance learning playbook for parents. It was really important that we had a research-based strategy and research-based program that we used. We did weekly sessions all of our sessions that we have done have been offered in English and Spanish, and all of the materials are also bilingual. We wanted to make sure that we provided sessions that were in the morning and the evening also, so that they could be accessible. Those particular sessions we also recorded, and then we send out a family newsletter each week. So if families aren't able to attend, or we're not able to attend those sessions, they could access that information based on the videos that were sent to them. We averaged 8 families per session in November, and 6 of those 8 attended every session. And I will say, like, those numbers are not where we would like for them to be, but that's definitely one of our next steps. We're really assessing what can we do to help families engage more. We also were able to get numbers on like how many families engaged in the newsletter. So we couldn't tell exactly how many families watched the videos, but I can tell you on average, we have 120 families that open the newsletter and it gets over 270 views. So we really feel like that's a good avenue, and we've continued that. At in November, when we finished our distance learning playbook for parents, we took the month of December off because we were being responsive. Our families just noted like the month of December is full of so many other things. So we regrouped, we looked at the data, we assessed needs, and we have now started a monthly PAX Tools community workshop. Last year at this time, we were providing monthly PAX Tools community workshops in person. This year, we are now holding those online. Our first session in January, we had 26 families, and our next one is this Wednesday. We have 17 families signed up. I do want to mention, we have expanded our PAX Tools community educator group. Last year, we had 4 community educators. We now have 7, 5 of whom are bilingual. This is crucial to us being able to continue supports and expanding supports. Also, it allows us to do things like provide support for our Champions program. And I know that our early learning hub, they are getting some support from some of our community educators. So we're trying to make sure that we work throughout the district with other departments and other groups so that we can have community educators that can serve multiple areas, and then we collaborate together and talk about the needs. I also just want to do a huge shout out to Kendra and Liliana Jimenez, who spent a ton of time just working really hard, and Dale Henderson, on creating bilingual videos and materials that are now on our website for every family to provide them information on how to access and register, and just an overview of the resources that are available to families during those workshops. I do also want to note that we received a grant to provide all of the materials to our families, and they are bilingual for free. So every family that attends those sessions receives all the materials they need to implement those strategies. And we deliver those either to their homes or they pick them up at schools. Next, please. I keep wanting to caw, Cassie, but so we're going to continue our PAX Tools community workshops. And as we move into LIPI and hybrid, or limited in person and hybrid, we will continue to use the systems that we have in place to assess family needs and see if we need to expand our supports and ensure that we're doing that within the capacity that we currently have. We're also really working on ways to get more feedback from families, because I know it's often asked, well, what do families tell you? And that has been an area that we just have not gotten a lot of response. Even if we give them time in the workshops, we send things digitally, getting a response and feedback information has been an area that we are exploring, like how can we do that better so that we can really make those decisions based on their needs. And then we're going to continue to collaborate across departments and just continue to use the resources that we have as a Forest Grove team to ensure that we're meeting all the needs of all of our families.
Okay, thank you. Next up is Suicide Prevention and Flight Team. As the board knows, we had a new district policy adopted at the end of June based on Senate Bill 52 around suicide prevention. Out of that policy, we developed a Forest Grove School District Suicide Prevention Plan, which can be found on our school district website. As a part of that plan, we partnered with 321 Insight, which is an online training service that we utilize for some of our instructional assistants to develop online modules around staff suicide prevention training. And at the beginning of this school year, all of our school counselors utilize these modules to provide building level professional development around suicide prevention. So this was the first year in district where all staff have received that type of suicide prevention training at the beginning of the school year. Going forward, those online modules will be used as part of our staff onboarding process. So any staff person that's hired into the school district, whether they're certified or classified, will gain access to our suicide prevention policies and our procedures and some professional development on that topic before their first day of working with students. We also, as a team, have been really focused on suicide prevention during comprehensive distance learning. A lot of our team members, including school counselors, school psychologists, care coordinators, mental health specialists, have attended trainings, especially the youth SAVE training, the youth suicide assessment and the virtual environment training, to understand how we can do better about reaching youth during the comprehensive distance learning environment. Another focus this fall was flight team virtual response planning. So we had a work group put together that focused on, in the event of a crisis or a death of a student or a staff person, how can we respond rapidly in the virtual environment to ensure that we're getting that support, that grief support to students and staff members and the community in a timely fashion. In terms of next steps, we have a Connect Suicide Postvention training set up for all district flight team members. Those are those wonderful folks I mentioned previously, like care coordinators and school counselors. Connect is one of the Oregon Big Six suicide prevention trainings that we'll be bringing into district. We also want to develop question, persuade, refer, or QPR training capacity within our district. That's another one of those Oregon Big Six recommended suicide prevention programs. And both of our care coordinators, Hannah and Kendra, are currently going through the process to become trainers in QPR. So that's a resource we'll have within our district without having to go out to other organizations to get that training. We also have applied for and received a Lines for Life mini grant to support the time to pull another group together this spring and really look at our suicide assessment protocols and look at best practices and see where there might be areas of improvement. Staff wellness, Kendra.
Yes, thank you, Cassie. So initially, our mental health care coordinator positions were created to support students and families in getting connected to mental health resources. But this year, we really saw a need to support teachers and staff members just with the pandemic and the change in the big changes in their jobs. We really just wanted to increase our outreach and support to staff members. So we have provided staff care coordination services, so offering staff members support in getting connected to outside counseling resources. We have piloted a group called Onward, which is essentially a group that cultivates emotional resilience in educators. There is a Mindfulness Matters group at the high school that is co-facilitated by our care coordinator, Hannah. And we've also been doing a behavioral health and wellness quarterly newsletter. Go next, Cassie, thank you. So in regards to our Onward group that I mentioned, which is a group that cultivates resilience in staff and educators, we meet monthly, and initially 74 certified staff members expressed interest in participation in September. Our monthly attendance has decreased to about an average of 23 the last two sessions. However, staff members have been communicating that they're still accessing and engaging with the materials that we put on Canvas. And as we mentioned, staff now has access to care coordination. So we've also been offering staff members support in getting connected to outside mental health resources and navigating those systems. So we included a few quotes that teachers put in their exit slips, and I won't read them all, but just kind of some of the general things that feedback that we've been hearing is that teachers and staff members are just feeling validated after attending the group, that they appreciate having a supportive space, that they feel the group is rewarding and low pressure since we don't require any readings. We suggest some readings and we have a book that we've provided for everybody, but we don't require it because we want staff to just be able to show up without feeling overwhelmed. And they also express that they appreciate being able to learn how to handle their emotions and stress. And these are some of our data that we collected from our Onward group. We gave them a pre-survey in September on their knowledge around how to cultivate resilience in themselves as an educator, and the average score was about 6. And then we gave them another survey in November, and the average score increased to about an 8. Same thing with combating stress as an educator. They initially said that they were around an average of a 6, and that increased to a 7.5. So even though the number of staff members that have been completing the surveys has decreased, we are still heading in the right direction in supporting staff in increasing and cultivating resilience.
And it's hard to know with this data, just to put it out there, we went from 60 responses for our first kind of rating session to 18 responses to our second. So did they rate higher because they stuck with it? Or did the staff who are more interested in resilience end up sticking with it to fill it out? We're not sure, but we're going to continue collecting data and being curious about it.
Yes, and this is a group that we're going to be doing monthly through the end of the school year. So our next steps for supporting staff wellness is to plan for expansion of staff wellness groups to include classified staff for next school year. So this year we just did the group for certified staff, and next year we want to expand it for classified staff as well. We also want to focus on ways to integrate staff wellness practices into buildings. So integrating staff wellness in buildings is a step for future expansion. And we want to explore how to do this, how to incorporate staff wellness into meetings in all buildings, because we know, staff members are still going to be under extra stress with the pandemic and LIPI and hybrid and things that we might be moving towards. And so we really want to continue focusing our support for our staff members. And we want to figure out how to provide support to buildings as well, and give them resources on emotional health for our staff building leaders so they can bring those to their staff building meetings. We also want to expand community circles to our high schools as well. So.
All right, thank you. So this is our last component of behavioral health and wellness that we are going to talk about this evening. And I really struggled with whether to put this slide first or last. And we ended up putting it last because it really brings together everything we've talked about this evening. I know we have a lot of acronyms that we throw around in district, and this is another one. It's MTSS, or Multi-Tiered Systems of Support. And currently right now in district, we have 2 separate systems to look at student intervention. We have RTI, or Response to Intervention, which is our academic intervention system that looks at our core and the students need additional support and then individualized supports. And then we have a system called BRTI, or Behavioral Response to Intervention, that runs concurrently to that, functions similarly, but focuses solely on behavior. This is great. However, we know that not all students are just going to have behavioral concerns or just going to have academic concerns that we need to meet. So Multi-Tiered Systems of Support, or MTSS, takes a whole child approach and looks at the whole student and says, what do we know about this student? What's the context of this student? And how can we help support them to do the best they can in school? Everything you've heard here tonight, from our Tier 1 supports with our student success coach to the Tier 2 supports we're talking about with school counselors, to the Tier 3 supports we're talking about with our care coordinators, are all part of the behavioral health and wellness components of multi-tiered systems of support in district. One thing we've been focused on that we've learned this year is that to build a successful MTSS system, we need to have increased collaboration between departments, whether that's curriculum and instruction, behavioral health and wellness, special education, English language development, equity. We all need to be at the table to look at the whole child and get students the level of support they need in school. Another thing we realized as we were going through this process was that we have a lot of really wonderful data in district, but it's not all stored in the same place. So through a partnership with Panorama, we've purchased the Student Success Dashboard, which is an online platform which allows us to see all student data in one location. So we can see academic data such as grades and benchmark assessments. We can see behavioral health data in terms of, we can see discipline data, we can see attendance data, and eventually we'll also be able to see the social and emotional learning universal screener data in that platform as well. So next steps for multi-tiered systems of support, we are going to collaboratively develop a MTSS manual, and that's with curriculum and instruction and student services both at the table. Develop a plan to roll out MTSS across K-6 schools. And once again, this is not totally different than what we've had in place previously. It's just about increasing collaboration and bringing it all together for students. And also focus on the integration of Panorama Student Success Dashboard into the multi-tiered systems of support process and really bring that data to the forefront and allow teachers access to it as well at some point, so they are continuously reviewing that data. That's it. That was a lot of information. What questions do folks have for us?
Hey, Cass, it's Brad.
Hey.
You knew it was coming, didn't you?
I am. Come on. What is it? Is it about data? What's the question?
So the collaboration piece, is it harder now in this kind of world that we're in right now, or is it easier? And when you say collaboration, what does collaboration look like with CNI and special education right now? How is that working? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I like to remind myself that nothing's all good or all bad, and there are definite challenges because we're online and we're not all in the same place physically all the time, or if we are, we're wearing masks. However, I have to say kind of the silver lining is it's a lot easier to get a large group of people to the table virtually than it was physically in person. That's true for school counselors as well, I have to say. Currently what that looks like is we've started a curriculum and instruction and student services collaboration group. And I think we've met about 5 times at this point, and we're going to be meeting bi-monthly. And during these meetings, for example, we just had one last Friday. And during this meeting, we're going to lay out projects or initiatives that span multiple departments. We're going to create work groups that go out of these meetings, develop a draft, bring it back. So we're all at the table and we all have a voice in it.
Good, thank you. That sounds good. The other thing, I think, baselining that data and trying to determine how do you include that administrator in the building as a part of that process, and are we including the administrator in the building?
And could you clarify for me? Do you mean in terms of multi-tiered systems of support or?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. I really have to give a shout out right now to Joseph Gale and to Troy Fisher, because he's been really heavily involved in the pilot of the social emotional learning survey at 3rd grade. Joseph Gale and given us a lot of feedback about multi-tiered systems of support. So part of that collaboration process is going to need to be us coming together as CNI student services and then bringing it to elementary and secondary principals meetings and really getting that principal perspective so we're all on the same page.
Thanks.
Cassie, this is Narsa. Thank you for the presentation. Very educational, a lot of information. So quick question, how are you all taking care of yourself? Because it's a lot that you are taking in.
Oh, Narse, that is such a good question. We've been talking about that as a group, this idea of like helping the helpers. And a lot of it happens through our regular meetings, I would say. Like sometimes it's really nice just to make time to come together. And we follow the social emotional learning signature practices in our meetings too, which means that we start with a check-in and we end with an optimistic closure. But I'm gonna be honest, because I have kind of the pipeline to a lot of our care providers in district right now, it's challenging and they're taking on a lot. And so I think we'll continue to have self-care be the focus of a lot of those meetings.
Thank you for all the work you do.
Thank you.
I have a question. Christine, I noticed in the beginning that there was no data on Dilly. no referrals for Dylan. Was that that just happened, or was it an oversight, or was there no referrals?
Kate, are you talking about, sorry, I'm going to jump in real quick. Are you talking about the care coordination referrals from Kendra?
I thought it was Christine that was talking about it, but maybe not. There's a lot there, but I didn't see any referrals from Dilly. So I thought that was unusual, but maybe it's a smaller school. Maybe it's not.
I believe that was for the care coordinator referrals, because I noticed that as well. And
okay.
Dilly is one of our 2 schools that's at or under that 1 to 250 ratio for school counseling. So
Okay.
I would wager that the school counselor at Dilly has some more time to be able to make those connections, but I do know she's reached out with Kendra in the past.
I also, when you were talking about 28 teachers, are these 28 teachers new teachers that you're coaching, or is it just teachers that are reaching out to you?
Great question. So some of them are new teachers. Some of them, there's a broad range. The way that teachers get into a full coaching cycle with me is request. I meet and work with a lot of teachers, but especially as teachers reach out and request for support, they have the opportunity to engage in a full coaching cycle. So the 28 teachers currently, some of those teachers are first year, some of those teachers, very honestly, I'm working with a few teachers that have 30 plus years of experience. And so it's really, at this particular point, it's a needs based, and they reach out to me and they choose the level of their support. Some, as I mentioned earlier, want to just meet on a monthly basis, but many teachers, as they learn more and more about the true impact cycle, coaching cycle, engage in that work.
So when you say a cycle, is it like 5 meetings or 6 meetings, or as need be?
That is a great question too. So one of the pieces that I'm working on is really trying to figure out how to collect information on how long is the average coaching cycle. I can't answer that question in a specific. There are some teachers that we can meet. So we do a pre-meeting. We talk about what are the needs that you currently have with your students. So we always focus on student needs. And then we do something called a reality check. They schedule a time for me, or I will say in the Zoom world, it is so much easier to do a reality or a baseline because we are recording so many lessons. And so teachers often will work together. And let me just give you a concrete example. I'm working with a teacher who wants to decrease the amount of transition time. So we met on Monday for 30 minutes. And this teacher said, I just feel like it's taking so much time for us to get started with our lesson. So on Tuesday, she recorded the lesson she was talking about, and then we did a data dive, and it took 7 minutes and 57 seconds for her students to get from her asking for them to get their materials to the time that she started. So then she set a goal. Her goal is within 3 weeks to be at 2 minutes. Okay. That is, so then we talk about like, what are the strategies? What's our progress monitoring? And we go from there. I've been in some coaching cycles that last 3 weeks. And I honestly am also in some coaching cycles that we're still working on the same goals as the beginning of the year because they're all teacher student driven.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad to hear that it's both. It's new teachers and other teachers, because there's just a lot of new tools and programs out there to help everyone. For referrals, what % of community assistance are being utilized by the district, or is that not part of this presentation, for social emotional needs of our students?
I'm sorry, Kate, can you clarify? I'm not sure I'm understanding.
Well, I look at the amount of time that you're looking at the mental health and the referrals and that. So how many agencies are you using or utilizing outside of our district? Are you using in-house most of the time, the counselors and the psychologists, Or is there 10% of using and referrals to outside agencies?
That's a good question. So for our care coordinators specifically in the data they presented, I believe it was about 5% of referrals ended up working with the mental health specialist that's part of the school district. And that would really be through our special education services. The rest of the referrals partner with community-based services. So Hannah and Kendra really excel at forming those relationships with community providers. Some of them are providers that accept Oregon Health Plan. So the larger kind of community-based mental health providers. Some of those folks are individual private practitioners that they've formed relationships with that accept private insurance because they have to be adept at connecting students and families to a provider that also accepts their insurance and is appropriate for them. But the majority, yes, outside community providers.
And lastly, could you send a copy of your presentation to the board members? So I'd like to read it a little bit better. It's a little bit hard to read on the computer screen. And
absolutely, yeah.
Thank you, everyone, for doing what you're doing. It's really important work.
Thank you. And we have, believe it or not, this was a shortened version of what we've been focused on through the first semester. So I know, Brad, I see your face, but yes, it was shortened. So we have more data too. We have more information. We're happy to share that. If you have follow-up questions, we're available to answer any of those even after this evening.
Cassie,
Yeah,
I have one,
go ahead, Narse.
just one more question. Sort of follow up what Kay was asking. I was glad to see ASHA listed there. What does that look like right now? Because I participated by taking some students and my staff, a counseling team from Pacific. So where are you at with that? Is it mainly going to the virtual presentations or is there actually a contract? What's going on?
So that's a great question. We are in the beginning stages of working with ASHA. Kendra's had the experience of working with them in another position previously in Hillsborough School District. So that's how we had the connection. For this spring specifically, we're partnering with them to bring in a parent experience. So a parent kind of storytelling panel event for our upper grades, because right now we're focused on what additional support can we provide to parents at the middle and high school level because they're asking for it. And PACS Tools is really designed more for the elementary level. So we're hoping to start there and it's all virtual. And then after that experience, we'll have more conversations about what future presentations or rollouts would be.
I just wanted to take a second and thank Kim, Cassie, Christina, Kendra, Hannah, Marinda. We've got, and all our other counselors and the rest, because of, I just want to remind board members, we've approved a whole student investment account expenditure that's like 10 FTE of counselors and another student success coach. And we weren't able to implement that this year. And when they showed me this presentation, the breadth of kind of what's going on in our district right now, as far as behavior, health and wellness, it was, it's inspiring. And I think what it looks like right now, the legislator hasn't approved a budget yet, but currently they're talking about fully funding our student investment account, which should lead to some of the other pieces here that we need to put into place. And so again, I know this was a lot of hard work for our folks because of the breadth of it is just pretty inspiring. So thank you very much. And just wanted to make sure I said that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all. We'll send over that presentation.
I just have one. So to kind of piggyback on what Mr. Parker said, the number that, I mean, it was a great presentation, tons and tons of data and information. The counselor numbers were eye-opening, and you know, they 1 to 360 or 1 to 379 or 1 to 429 is what I wrote down for the middle school. And for me, being an ex middle school principal and high school principal, the middle school sometimes gets, I don't know, I have a place in my heart for the middle school. So those numbers are pretty high, and thanks, Mr. Parker, for mentioning that, because hopefully we can do something, because there's so much work there to be done, especially I think when we come back from CDL and get back in person. So thanks very much for the presentation. It was excellent.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, thanks very much. We'll move on. We have our next presentation is Mr. Parker and return to school or reopening.
Awesome. I got to get my, again, I've got lots of thoughts going on from my last presentation. I'm going to have to get rolling here. Wanted to spend just a little bit of time tonight just making sure that we're all kind of in the same place with where we're at with returning to in-person instruction. So with that said, I wanted to kind of talk through, this is the graph that you've been seeing. I don't have the new one. I get the new one tomorrow morning. I can tell you I met with Washington County Health this morning, and the new dot's going to fall right about there. It's going to be about 169, and we're about 4.3% positivity. So in Washington County, we continue to watch our cases drop. The OSU forecaster that I presented several weeks ago, we do not see any indication of another wave coming at this point. So we continue to watch these numbers drop. On Friday, we sent, you don't need to read all of this. We put it in there so that when we send this to you later, you'll be able to read it and move on. But Friday, we sent out a survey to parents, and we kind of described very loosely, not with a lot of detail, what the hybrid was going to look like, both at K-6 level and if we can figure it out, 7-12 level. And I'll talk about that coming up. We surveyed them, and our initial data, as of this afternoon, we had about 1,598 responses. We've shared it in our communication on Facebook, district web pages. We'll have, this is introductory data, and we're going to continue to push on a couple of areas, but by and large, I wanted to get back to you. And this was the first question that we needed to have answered is, are you thinking about sending your children back to a hybrid, or do you just want to stay in CDL the rest of the year? That was the basic structure of what we were trying to figure out. So here's kind of the data that we got. This is kind of the different schools that it came from. And this lines up with about the number of students. Again, our secondary schools should be about half of the respondents, and the elementary should be the other half. So I don't see anything kind of abnormal in the way the responses came back. Then we kind of asked the race, ethnicity, so we could understand who was getting this, who got the survey and who was responding to it. This is a little bit out of order. I would have expected our Hispanic to be closer to where our white percentage is there of 56 and vice versa. We've got a couple of things going on. Our migrants and our ELL folks will be pushing kind of phone calls to get people to respond. And we'll go back out and continue to work with our principals to get some more responses on this. And if you have a question, ask it as we go along here. This is the data. The first on the left-hand side here, basically it was, as hybrid was explained above, will your student participate? And what we found right now, and this is not with a lot of data, but the basic gist is about 60% of our parents said that they're interested in getting their children back into some sort of hybrid model, and about 40% are saying, no, we're thinking about just staying in CDL the rest of the year. We saw basically the same percentages in our grades 7 through 12. Their question was a little bit different because of we're really struggling figuring out how to run the logistics for a hybrid model at in the secondary schools. I met with all Washington County superintendents, and they're all struggling with how to do this. There are some schools, Bend High School, Bend secondary schools are running in a hybrid starting today. We'll be in contact with them this week. Today was not the right day to touch base with them because it was their first day, but I do want to know more about what their systems are and what the logistics are, and we'll follow up with that. This we broke down between NAMS and the high school, and again, the data just was almost exactly the same. About 60% and 40% was kind of the split between the two schools. We'll be utilizing this data as we're start working on what these instructional models is going to look like. wanted to talk a little bit about vaccine updates. And again, there's a lot of data on here. I'll just read it to you. We put more words here because we thought people might want to go back later and read this. We've been through 3 waves. Our first and second waves started 2 weeks ago. They scheduled, and within a week, we started scheduling wave 2. And this is basically, wave 1 was all the folks in our elementary buildings that make the buildings run, custodians and nutrition services and front office folks. And then pre-K through first grade teachers. Wave 2 was basically the rest of the folks in our elementary schools. What we're hearing right now, because of HIPAA rules, we can't actually ask somebody directly, did you get a vaccine or did you not? But right now we're estimating about 90% of wave 1 and 2 will have gotten their shot. Wave 3, we announced last week, and they started making appointments, but the appointments ran out with only about 20% of that wave able to make an appointment. We're now kind of stalling out with the amount of vaccine that's coming into our area and the expansion of more folks getting vaccines. So the next 2 waves could be more problematic for us. We are thinking that wave 3 is going to finish here in the next week and a half or so. Wave 4 will be basically all of our high school, central office folks, and then it also includes a whole bunch of folks who are help our organization, but aren't necessarily our teachers and are classified. And that's our substitutes, our coaches, and some of those folks are also in wave 4. Wave 4, we're expecting to start sometime around February 17th, in about a week or so, and get scheduled. We're just not sure how fast those are going to actually happen for us. I think I got most of that. So here's kind of the schedule that I'm going to be proposing to you as far as like the set of steps here to kind of get to some kind of decision here. This week, what we're doing is, next week, I should say, we'll be determining the details of the 2 models that we're trying to send out to staff. So we've got our different folks within the district. We've got our elementary principals. We've got a group of teachers that we're working with. We're developing kind of some schedules, 2 specifically, that we think are going to work for us. We'll push that out in a staff survey to staff on Friday. We'll get those results back, and then we'll start looking and trying to narrow down to a single instructional model. Principals next week, starting the 16th, probably the 17th, 18th, and 19th, we'll try and run informational meetings with parents so they can understand what this is going to look like and how it's going to work. The 22nd is our next board meeting. I'll bring to you a schedule, a calendar of kind of, there's a couple of adjustments we need to make. I'll bring the instructional model for you to talk about and understand how we're going to do this. And then I'm going to ask for you to approve kind of that proposal. There's a couple of other pieces, vaccinations and some other things that other districts are looking at, but I'll bring you that proposal, and then we'll need to approve something on the 22nd. And then on the 23rd, yes.
Do you want questions now, or do you want to wait till the end?
No,
I'm just wondering, do we really need a full week? Are some of the other districts were just like using like 3 days, and then you have elementary really running during that prior to that, right?
So here's what I'm going to propose, Brad, which is I still have to negotiate this. So I'm going to tell you what we're planning. I think the idea right now would be it's 2 days and then the Wednesday PD day. And then we tie in some other Wednesdays before then where we clear them so that staff have almost full use of them.
Okay.
But it won't be a full week.
Okay.
I don't believe, but I still have to negotiate that.
Okay. All right. That makes sense. It seems, I'm just looking at some of the other districts and they're not using a full week. They're using like 3 days and some other kind of similar kinds of formats. I guess the other question I would have is it possible to have your principals making contact with those other principals of schools that are actually have been running for a while and find out what's working and what's not working? I know you and I talked about that a little bit before, but
yeah, that's exactly what we're doing.
Okay, good.
Yeah, absolutely. Estacade is running right now, and there's some different schools are using, again, folks getting into the hybrid, they're using, most of them are, there's kind of a simulcast model where you have the kids in front of you and then the kids at home at the same time. And so
Right.
trying to figure out whether they're doing that or whether they're running a separate schedule.
Okay, okay, thanks, Dave.
Yep. And I'll bring all of that to you at the next board meeting, and I'll try and get it out ahead of time so you have a chance to look at it and see that kind of thing. And then after that board meeting, there's some period of time that we're going to need to parents to make a decision about whether or not they're going to stay in CDL or whether they're going to get involved with whatever the model is that we have. Because we're going to have to assign staff to it, we need them to make a decision. Now there's a way for us to do this that wouldn't necessarily need them to do that, but until we kind of nail down what that is, we're going to need to, I'll bring that to you. But most likely we're going to need folks to make a decision because we need to assign staff to different spaces.
Another question.
Yeah.
Has Midco called the other bus companies that are currently delivering kids to schools and just to find out what their processes are?
So it's interesting because again, Midco has some of the other districts that'll be in, but Banks and Gaston are much smaller. They have it's a different set of problems. I don't know. I'll talk to Eileen, but I think we're trying to do that with basically all of these things. Brad, is to make sure that we have good information and understand. I'm going to show you in a second here. I meet with superintendents each week, and we're sharing tons of information because of we're all trying to make sure we hit the mark on this.
So Dave,
yep.
Question: the March 31 to April 2 transition day for teachers, that's 3 days, and then would that be for pre K1 teachers and I don't know 2-4? I mean, who
yeah
transitioning during those?
So I think what we would say there, Mark, is, and again, this is very much a draft, but I think what we would say there is the folks that need to transition from CDL to a hybrid, we would want all of those folks to have this transition time to be able to move back into their classrooms and to be ready to do that work. I think that's going to be pre-K 6, because all of them will be transitioning in some way or another. But those are all still things that we need to I need to figure out, and I'm going to have to negotiate too.
Yeah, and then Dave, the other grade levels, if we ever get to the point where they're transitioning to classrooms, they just have 3 days later sometime, right?
Exactly. We're still trying to work through that because, again, if I could do this together, it would make more sense. The time period that we're identifying there, the week before is spring break. And so this would be the Wednesday, Thursday, Friday after spring break. We were trying to connect those a little bit. We're forecasting right now kind of an April 5th for K1. They've never been in our school buildings before. And so just getting some time to begin to meet with them. The other grades in would still be in CDL. And then week of April 12th would be to bring the rest of the elementary schools back in. I put a question mark around 5-6 because I still have some questions about, they're in separate buildings. So when would be the right time to do that? There's a technology piece to this too that I know we have some concerns about, is to do some of this work, we have some additional technology that we're pushing into the classrooms. So we're still working through how to do that efficiently and effectively. But those are all the things that when I bring to you on the 22nd, I'll have answers for all those pieces.
Dave, another comment that I might I'm just wondering, once we determine what the baseline, the number of students that will be returning back to school, once we have those numbers, not that they won't change, won't that determine how large of a movement we could make in terms of, if you get a high school that only half of the kids are going to be returning back, that'll change the whole game in terms of, and the middle school too, I would think.
Yep.
I just watched some of those other districts, and it seemed to be some of the kids didn't return, which made it easier for the kids that did return. And then there was a slow trickle back once they figured out things were working out all right. Does that make sense?
No, that's totally exactly what we're beginning to wonder. It's one of the reasons why we pushed out the survey on Friday, is because of this distribution does make a difference in how you design your next step.
I'm just thinking about transition to the fall too. Having that experience moving into the fall makes a lot of sense. And,
right.
And you got, I mean, okay.
Yep. Briefly, I wanted to show you where other districts are at right now. And again, they have to negotiate, and there still could be changes, but this is kind of the same thing. Tiger Tualatin's looking at kind of a March 29th, that first day back after spring break, for them to start the K1, and then their April 5th to 5. Beaverton's looking at an April 5th kind of pre-K 6. They still have lots of negotiations to do there. HSD's got the March 29th pre-K 2, and then they're doing April 5th, 3 through 6. Sherwood's got a March 8th. There's lots of conversations going on there, so I don't know, but that's what they're currently focused on. They were out early, and they have, I'm not sure if they're going to hit that or not. We'll see. And then Forest Grove, I just put in the basic gist of what we were thinking. April 5th, I think it's actually pre-K 1, and then 2 through 4, April 12th. As far as secondary goes, all of the other districts right now, Hillsborough has said that they want to move to in the fourth quarter, and I think that starts on April 12th for them. They want to move to a hybrid. They don't have it figured out yet. I'm talking to them. Again, if we do get it figured out, I would be trying to talk about that with us too. Tiger Tualatin, Beaverton, they're all still kind of stuck with being really large schools and trying to set up the hybrid. I don't know where they're at as far as the number of kids who want to stay in CDL, but you can see we're still lined up in the same basic areas as the other districts are time-wise for coming back. And that's about what I know right now. I am hearing President Biden on Sunday called the reopening of schools a national emergency. And the CDC is supposed to be coming out with new recommendations on Wednesday. So I'm still kind of waiting to see if there's some changes. I'm hearing that the governor is going to make some changes in our county status. I'm also hearing there may be some other announcements. I'm not sure what that is yet, but this could be another week of change for us as we begin to see kind of what some of those recommendations are.
Dave, what about the calendar? Is the school year going to be going through June or not?
Currently, we would leave the calendar days where they are. I think what we're looking at is with some of the funds that are coming to the district, look at increasing access to summer school, but not necessarily lengthen the school year. Otherwise, we're going to have to pay extended contract for those extra days. We can certainly talk about that, but I think the idea now would be to try and fund interventions both in the summer and in the fall, and get kids. I'm going to be bringing to you some other budgetary things around hiring direct services to students for fall in a bunch of different ways.
Okay.
That's it.
Okay, thanks. Yeah.
One more comment?
Yeah.
I just got a text from Val, and I just want to make sure that, so that I'm just wondering, did you say what was the date that you had targeted for the secondary level? Dave, did you give us a date?
Yeah. So our fourth quarter starts on April 12th.
Okay.
So if we're going to move on something, that's the logical date to move, because we will have finished. The way we're doing our courses this year, they're going to finish a semester in a quarter. So they'll have finished a semester on the week before, and the 12th would be the start of a new set of classes.
Okay.
So it makes
the other question I would have would be, what was the date that we're going to have the baseline data for the number of kids attending?
I should have that. I think by the, well, okay, good question. I'll continue to push on this survey. Hopefully by the end of the week at the Friday memo, I'll send out what I know. Okay. And then I think what we're looking at is somewhere after the 22nd, but before March 1st, is kind of what I'm looking at for having parents make decisions about this. And then we would have folks in the building, administrators and counselors, probably follow up with phone calls to folks that didn't make a decision so we could figure out what they want to do. Okay. So I'm thinking it's around March 1st.
Okay, so a definite cutoff date, not to say it's a done deal. It just gives us a mark, a kind of a baseline of where we're going to be.
I'm still not sure that's quite enough time, so it may move out, but we've got to get rolling on figuring out transportation, nutrition services. So I just still got to figure out exactly how to get that done.
Okay, thanks, Dave.
Yep.
Thank you. Okay. Let's see. The next item on the agenda is an action item. It's related to the superintendent 360 evaluation questions. Those questions were included in the packet, and I'll just, folks have had an opportunity to review those. Are there any comments or questions about that? Okay, hearing none. Is there a motion to approve those evaluation questions?
I move that we approve the evaluation questions.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Comments, I assume. So we'll do a roll call vote. Narce?
Yes.
Kate?
Yes.
Brad?
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well, so that motion passes. Thank you. And now we're, let's see, we're on to future action items. Northwest Regional ESD Local Service Plan. Mr. Parker, if you have any comments about that.
Yeah, just a couple of quick slides here, but this is today we're just getting a reading of next year's local service plan. This assumes a $9.1 billion budget. We're hoping that they're actually closer to 9.3, but that's what this assumes. Available revenue, we're going this is with a 49-51 split. That's not what the state's recommending, but it is what we're going to recommend because that's a more responsible way to do this. We're looking at flat to declining enrollment region-wide. Districts with declining enrollments will be held harmless. Again, that's the same piece here. We don't really have any additions to the core services. So this budget is pretty much exactly the same as of what we're getting currently last year and this year. The increases projected for the cost of technology services due to inflationary factors offset by the PERS rate reduction. And then we've got they are increasing the cost on professional development strands. So when we take our service credits and then purchase professional development from them, they are raising the price of that. But other than that, it's a pretty straightforward budget. And in it, you know, you've got the same basic, you've got the basic money of how everything goes there. And then lastly, these are kind of our core services that we get, which is there's network services, iVision, Synergy that we contract with them, library services. You can see the other pieces. I won't go through all of them. But for the most part, this budget is just a rollover budget. And I don't really, I'm going to recommend that we approve it. I don't really see any issues with it. About the one thing that is out there is we currently contract the truancy services. And I know that's one thing. I talked to Dan Goldman, the superintendent there, and we want to sit down and do some work on kind of what that is and what exactly we're doing in those services. Other than that, I don't think there's really any other changes.
Dave, is there just in terms of the 2.5% increase on the PD strands, did they give a reason for that?
No, I would make a guess, but let me get the actual information from Dan and I'll throw it into the Friday memo.
Okay, maybe they're hiring more people or something. I don't know.
Their professional development team is stellar. So, I mean, they do have, but I think it's probably more related to the PERS rate reduction piece. But I'll get that answer for you.
Okay, all right, thanks. Okay, future board items and board discussion. We did add a diversified workforce work session has been added to this list. So that's on been added to the future board items and board discussion list. So that item's been added. And then some informational items. The February 1st, 2021 enrollment report was included in the packet. And the reports for January 2021 were included in the packet for the finance report. So that's what we have this evening. Are there any, before we close it out, any comments or questions that board members want to make before we adjourn?
I have one question on the general fund budget that was put out. I see that Harvey Clark's building site funds is minus almost $7,000. How come?
I will check with Eileen here. I don't know if she's there, or otherwise I'll get back to you and answer that.
Yeah. I just noticed it, and when I was reading over this, and
which was it?
It's Harvey Clark. It says Harvey. Yeah, no, HR. What's HR?
Human resources.
Yeah, it's Harvey. It's Harvey Clark, I believe. It says HR building site funds minus $6,901. So, usually you don't see anything in the minus range. So, I was curious about it.
I'll find out.
Yep.
Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. We will, let's see, what time is it here? We will adjourn the meeting. The school board meeting is adjourned this evening at 7:24 p.m. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Bye.